Lucas, please do not do this, Mary. My wife of 7 years was preparing to go on a date with another man. Lucas, we've gone over this. I am going. He wants me and I want him. You might as well accept it. Is he worth a divorce? Over. Mary stopped applying makeup and turned to face me. You know you will not divorce me. You are aware of this. If you divorce me, I will keep the house and the children, and you will have to pay me alimony and child support. I will make it nearly impossible for you to see the girls, and you'll be paying me to have sex with other men while not getting any yourself. She returned to applying her cosmetics. I couldn't believe it was the same woman I'd dated for a year and married for the previous 7 years. She had been nothing but lovely, respectful, and supportive the entire time. It now appears to have been nothing more than a performance. She was good. How would your mother react to what you're doing, Lucas? You are so inexperienced and trusting. It was her idea. I was raised with this purpose in mind. In a marriage, the woman is considered to be the dominant figure. We're not as physically strong as men, so we have to demonstrate our control in other ways. Mom did the same thing to Dad when I was younger. He gradually accepted his role, and you will too. Sure, it will be challenging, and your delicate male ego is likely to strike back. However, you will eventually understand that simply going along is the best option. She finished applying her cosmetics and examined her hair. Mary was a stunning woman. She was Armenian, with dark skin and long, straight black hair. She did have a bit of a nose, which she says caused her some problems when she was younger, but she had grown into it, and it now, paired with her deep brown eyes, gives her an exotic, sexy appeal. When we got married, I felt like I had hit gold. As I observed her, she abruptly slid her hands up her skirt, removed her thong, and dropped it on the floor. I figured that would only get in the way. I want him to have access to my pussy all night. Mary, if you do this, I will not be here when you return. She glanced at me again as if I were an idiot. Honey, I'm sorry you're struggling with this. Despite what you may believe, I genuinely adore you. I chose to marry you because of my feelings for you. And you're a greater man and father than any other man could possibly be. To me, other men are little more than physical pleasure. I just need more than a single man can supply. But if you stop being so hard on me about this, I'll reward you when I get home. Did she think that was an incentive? Her tone of speaking was obviously serious. She went on to say, I should warn you before that happens, but I know you've always liked me nice and furry down there. He does, however, like a girl, smooth, so I shaved everything off. The hits kept coming. You had to be kidding me. So some guy wants you to shave, and what he wants takes precedence over what your husband wants. And I'm expected to be comfortable with this? Maybe you're not okay with it, but you accept it as you would anything else. You cannot change. And if you truly get me off, I'll give you a fantastic BJ. I won't be able to fuck you again. He wants my pee to be only for him, but I will care for you in other ways. Not that this was going to be okay, but that was the proverbial final straw. Why don't you just leave me and go with him? She chuckled as if it was the most ludicrous notion in the world. Lucas, I told you that no one can meet all of my sexual requirements. Besides, he barely makes roughly $25,000 per year. He's just a nobody in a warehouse. But he has a large dick, and the girls he has been with claim he knows how to use it. No, we need your money to keep me living the lifestyle that your children and I deserve. So, how do I look? I observed she never claimed that she loved me for the same reason a slut would. She laughed at that. You are just trying to be cruel. But that's exactly what I was looking for. She took out her purse, placed her ID, a spare lipstick, and her emergency money inside, and went for the front door. Before departing, she approached me and attempted to kiss me. I turned my head, and all she saw was my cheek, and even then I retched a little. Lucas, I understand this will be difficult at first. It's not how you expected your life to be, and it will take some getting used to. However, you will come to love the freedom from responsibilities that this will provide for you. You will eventually be fine. I just know it. After all, you were some sort of soldier, so you're used to obeying directions, correct? It will all work out. Now I have to leave. With that, she was gone. It was just around 7 p.m., so I had a little time to kill some sort of soldier. I didn't discuss my experience in the army much. This was true. She never asked about it. So I suppose that was all she was expected to think. She would soon discover that being in the army entailed much more than just being a soldier. At around 730, I called her mother, despite the fact that I knew more than any of them suspected. I approached Margaret as if the events of the evening had taken me entirely by surprise. I described the chat Mary and I had. I knew Mary's father was severely abused, but I had no idea how bad it was until this happened. She expressed it in much the same way Mary did. Lucas, I understand this will be difficult to accept. You just have to accept that women are the natural leaders, and we must use all tools at our disposal to get that advantage. And, according to popular cultural beliefs, women require significantly more sex than males and can do so for much longer and more effectively. We need more than one lover and other guys to fill specific roles. As she explained her viewpoint, I found it difficult not to laugh out loud. Is this so? I asked. Of course. You, like my husband Gary, are mostly responsible for financial support and kid rearing. Do well, and you will be rewarded with access to our bodies. Mary tells me that P is solely for her lover. Don't worry about it. It is merely transitory. It has to be done at the start to give you something to strive for. As you become more accepting of your role, you will have more opportunities to please her in those ways. Actually, she'll need you to because you're her husband, and society standards need that you be the one she lives with. She'll need you to help her stay focused so she can properly manage the family. Does it all make sense? You know, Margaret, you did an excellent job describing it. It makes great sense. I'm glad I could help explain things for you. I understand that this appears harsh and drastic, but it will not take long for you to settle in and even love your role. I'm sure you're correct. Please make sure the girls are in bed by 9 o'clock, though. Of course, Lucas. I'm happy to follow your wishes in that regard. We women aren't unreasonable. Please call me if you have any further inquiries. Maybe I can answer them more clearly than Mary can. Margaret's involvement in this would not be without ramifications. She wouldn't be physically hurt in any manner. But I imagined that the means by which she would suffer would be far more awful for her. You see, I knew exactly what Mary was going to do. Mary was the one who had been overly trusting. She expected I would simply go along with things on a daily basis, and she had me duped. However, certain aspects of her behavior indicated that things were changing, so I asked a few of my brothers-in-arms to assist me out by doing what they did best. Alan was the most intelligent of us all. He had worked with intelligence units while we were abroad and had learnt nearly everything there was to know about surveillance and electronic security. He had tapped our phones and bugged Mary's car, pocketbook, and cell phone. He had plenty of audio of her discussing plans with her mother, friends, and lover. I believe some of her pals were planning to do the same thing, depending on how Mary's attempt went. David had also worked in intelligence, but he was a lower-level employee than Alan. David was one of the guys who falsified paperwork for various agents overseas in his civilian life. He stopped doing it, but he kept the knowledge in case it was needed again. David was also one of the top computer hackers. One of my commanders is currently overseas. Mark was now an executive for a company that did a lot of business internationally, which afforded him access to the company's private plane. He could utilize it as needed and had little reporting responsibilities. Finally, there was Jason Carl and Dennis Jacobs, as we referred to them as a group. These were the grunts, and they were good at it. They were expert shooters with their weapons and could move quietly with the best of them. All of the boys were on edge, and at 10 p.m., the plan went into effect. My request that the kids go to bed by 9 was part of the plan. I had packed suitcases for myself and the kids, largely with items of personal and sentimental worth. There were some clothes, but their toys took up the most of their packed possessions. We could purchase more clothing. I placed them into my car and started my final drive over to the in-laws. I parked up in front of Margaret and Gary's home. It was dark save for the light in Mary's parents' living room where they were watching television. When I stepped outside, I saw Jackie in place, peering over the home. Jason briefed me. The kids went down at 900 and were probably sleeping within 15 minutes. Since 9:30, the subjects have been watching television. The spouse has made a few excursions into the kitchen for drinks and snacks, but that has been their only movement thus far. We are ready to enter whenever you are. Simply utter the word. Do it. Jackie approached the home. If I hadn't known they were there, I would not have noticed them. They were only utilizing sidearms. No automatics are required for this procedure. I simply remained there and watched the living room, fascinated as the guys entered and easily subdued Margaret and Gary. I slowly approached the house and entered through the front entrance. I could hear Margaret pleading, "Please do not hurt us." "You must have the incorrect folks. We have not done anything. Our granddaughters are sleeping in the next room. Please let us leave. We will not tell anything to anyone." When she saw me enter the room, she stopped talking. "You will just..." "What's going on, Margaret? Do not keep us waiting." "Lucas, what is happening here? You quickly release us." "Margaret, shut up." I'd never spoken to her like that before, and she was taken aback. "There is nothing you or Mary can do about this. I advise you simply listen to what I am about to say. Please reserve your questions for the end." While we talked, Jacob calmly and effectively secured each of them to one of the dining room chairs. These guys were experts at this. Margaret and Gary would be trapped in the chairs until someone freed them or they managed to shatter them into pieces. Margaret. "Gary, I've decided that I will not accept the future that you and your daughter have attempted to give to me. As tempting as it was to devote my life to your daughter and delegate all duty to her, I just do not think it will work for me." I'm positive my sarcasm was evident. "I learned about your little scheme some time ago and prepared my own plans to deal with it. And because you agreed to it and even encouraged it, you will face some penalties." "And what would the implications be?" Margaret rudely interrupted. "Margaret, I asked you to keep your questions till the conclusion. I'm getting you all the information you require. But because you asked, I will address it now. Your penalty, in my opinion, will harm you the most. You will not see your grandchildren again. Lucas, no, please. No, you cannot do that. Please don't." I raised my hand to interrupt her rant. "I cannot, and I will. But Mary is still young. Perhaps she will eventually offer you with some substitutes. But that isn't my concern." She became abruptly aggressive, attempting to gain the upper hand. "We will find you, Lucas. We are willing to go to any length to find you. We do have money. We will discover you and you will be sorry. You are welcome to try." "Margaret, you are mistaken in one respect. You do not, as you claim, have money. What exactly are you talking about?" "Well, one of the consequences is never seeing your grandchildren again. Some procedures were required to prevent you from executing the exact action you are planning. As a result, I've had to deplete all of your bank accounts, which is a terrible situation. Except for enough to keep you going for a month or two. This includes your investment accounts, your 401k, and even the small hidden bank account you and Mary set up as an escape fund that you didn't realize I knew about. How could you do that? As you can see by the friends I'm with tonight, many of you misjudged the resources I had available to me as a result of my Army service. It's how I got my hands on almost every dime between us, including cash advances on all of your credit cards, before you even consider going after me. You'll have to deal with a rather heavy debt load. Gary, I hope you're not intending to retire anytime soon. I, on the other hand, will never need to work again." Gary had not spoken and was unaware. He only glared at me, though I believe he was expecting I would offer to take him with me. "But the good news is that you'll be in this together. Mary will be unable to afford the house because she does not work. And with the mortgages I've taken out on it, selling it won't be worth anything to you. Her credit cards have been canceled and yours are nearly maxed out. You will not have enough money to pay attention, so she will have to move in with you. And maybe the three of you can make it work. We will still find a way, you bastard. Just wait. I'm looking forward to it. I really do. I'll even offer you a clue to help you along. Do not bother searching within the United States. We will not be here. Don't bother looking for Lucas Riley or Lily Weston. After tonight, those people will no longer exist, at least not on paper. Neither could think of anything else to say. So I walked inside and woke the girls. "Daddy," they yelled in unison. We packed their belongings as I mentioned that we would be taking a short excursion. They appeared excited, and I said nothing when they said, "Mommy must be excited too. We would get to it, just not right now." I drove to the private airfield where Mark's corporate jet was waiting. Jason would drive my car to a nearby Motel 6 that I had booked to create a little deception. We boarded the plane and got settled. The girls were astounded at how much space they had. There were extremely few seats, especially as compared to a commercial flight, and they were mostly free to move around and play. The information for our new IDs awaited us on the plane. We had several hours to fly, so I used the opportunity to explain to the children that something had happened and we wouldn't be seeing Mommy, Grandma, or Grandpa again. We also discussed their new names and where we would be living, I'd tell you. But I cannot risk you telling Mary, you understand. They were upset and wept themselves to sleep, but I was convinced that they would adjust in the long run. They were still young, Mary. I finally arrived home from my date at 3 a.m. It was really just a date in the narrowest sense. There hadn't been any romance or affection. We met in a bar, had a few beers, and then returned to his apartment. I had definitely been fucked tonight, and not just by the person I had initially met with. We had also met a couple of his friends at the pub, so I went ahead and took them all on, wearing them out. Sure, I was sore, but I could have continued if necessary, which was more than the boys could claim. Lucas would just have to understand that I required more than he could supply. It was not a jab at him. No man could meet all of my requirements, and I had been dissatisfied for a long time before I got him where I needed him to be so I could start this whole process, but I intended to make up for lost time. That was for sure. I pressed the garage door opener and waited while the door rose. I wasn't shocked that Lucas's place was unoccupied. Dad had reacted in the exact way Mama described. I was hoping that everything would go nicely, but Mama was correct when she said that the male ego would not allow them to get along smoothly. Perhaps I'd been too harsh. I understand Larry wants exclusive rights to my pee, though. He had no trouble giving it to his friends, but I've been thinking that Lucas, as my husband, should be entitled to something more when he returns. I'll let him fuck me. It would smooth things out. I took a long shower to ensure everything was nice and clean. I didn't want that item to stay inside me any longer than necessary. I crawled naked into bed and fell asleep quickly. I awoke having slept reasonably well. I had grown accustomed to having Lucas by my side, and his departure had a greater impact on me than I had anticipated. But that was just proof that I truly loved him, regardless of what he was thinking right now. But he would be back in my bed soon. His love for his children would compel him to straighten up and fly correctly. I giggled a little to myself as I pictured him returning and begging me to let him serve me so he could see the females. It was shortly before 11 a.m. Lucas wasn't yet home. Still no surprise. But the more he stayed gone, the more I resolved to make him apologize. I called Mom and Dad's residence to check on the girls, but there was no answer. I then tried each of their cell phones, but there was also no answer. That seemed peculiar, I thought. They always responded, concerned. I drove over to their home. 20 minutes later, I pulled into their driveway. They also had their car there, and everything appeared as it should. I had assumed they were out because they had not answered the phone or were working in the yard. I let myself into the front door. Mom, Dad. I could barely hear the response, which sounded unusual. "Mary, honey, get in here, hurry." I dashed into the living room and was astounded to discover them both tied to a chair and lying on their sides on the floor. My God. Mom and Dad, what happened? I worked to untie them, as Mom explained. He took the babies, Mary. It was Lucas. He took them. What are you saying, Mom? Lucas did this to you and then took the girls? Yes, him with a few friends. I believe these are Army personnel. I do not know. They came in, tied us up, and Lucas went with the girls. He said he was leaving the nation and we wouldn't see them again. My mind was racing with this information. If I hadn't undervalued him so much, I would never have believed he was capable of something like this. There must be an alternative explanation. I'll fix it, I thought. He'll get his ass back here with my children, or he'll be damn sorry. Lucas. The phone rung, and it was the anticipated call from Mary. I had maintained this phone and added foreign service specifically for this phone conversation. I let it ring 4 times before responding. Hello? You son of a bitch. Where the hell am I? I hung up the telephone. It rang again shortly later. Do not fucking hang up on me. I hung up again. The phone rang again. This time I spoke first. Mary, this is your final opportunity to have a civil chat. If I hang up again, this will be the last time you hear my voice. Understood. I could practically hear her sneer over the phone. Yes, I do understand. So, what's going on? Why were my parents tied up? And where are my kids? So let me answer those in reverse order. First, you no longer have any children. Those who were once your children are now with me, and you will not see them again. But Mary, This is your final warning about language. Keep a civil tongue in your brain or I'll just finish this now. I merely kept this phone number open so we could talk one more time. When I hang up the next time, this number will no longer work. So if you want responses, you need monitor how you speak. Clear. Mary's tone of voice altered quickly. She probably thought she could still get to me but wanted to appear remorseful at this point. She was mistaken, of course, but she didn't realize it yet. Yes, I apologize. I'm just extremely upset. Imagine how I felt when I found my parents tied up and my children gone. And picture how I felt when I was informed that I would have to support my slut of a wife while she messed up everything or faced losing my children. None of this would have occurred if you had stayed at home instead of going out and fucking 3 different guys. Yes, I have. You followed. I understand exactly what you did, Lucas. Baby, I did not truly mean it. I was simply trying to encourage you to fight for me and show me how much you adore me. We have been married for 7 years. I should not have to fight for you anymore. A woman simply wants to be reminded of how desirable she is. That is a crock of trash, and you know it. Your mother explained everything to me. My duty as a provider and child-rearing is rewarded with sex. If I perform a good job, all the other men will serve to satisfy your sexual desires because that's all they could do. So now you can try to pull this on someone else. You were a fool to believe I would accept what you were trying to pull. Lucas, please. I apologize. Please return my children back to me. I will do anything. Sorry, Mary, you have displayed your true colors and that is the end of it. Have I told your mother that you are allowed to try to find us? However, we are living under various names. And in another country, we have new birth certificates that do not even identify you as their mother. So there is no paper trail for you to follow. This is the first time I've ever felt relieved that my parents perished in a car accident. That would have made it more difficult to escape. Goodbye, Mary. I could hear her screaming my name as I hung up the phone and flung it into the ocean. Here is the next story. My name is Tamika, and I am a 29-year-old housewife. Despite the fact that I do not have a permanent career, I do not consider myself to be merely a housewife. I've done everything from small enterprises to side jobs, but none of them have lasted long. I'm just someone who dislikes following a set pattern, yet I make my own money, albeit not as much as my husband. I have been married to my hubby for 2 years, Rain. Rain is a radiologist and a highly intelligent individual. He's also quite hardworking and it all pays off for him. But Rain is practically 10 years older than I am. He is 39 years old. I know you're asking how this relates to my cheating, but it does. Rain has a muscular body, which is one of the qualities that attracted me to him. I enjoyed his physical appearance, but when we started dating, I was quickly dissatisfied. I discovered that a man's muscles do not dictate the size of his tool. The Rain isn't as heavy as I expected, down there. Our private life isn't fantastic either. He does his best, but he is always weary from work and has little time to offer me what I desire. That's how I got into this situation. I knew Rain didn't fulfill me as much as I hoped from the start, but I married him nonetheless since he checked all the other boxes. I believed he'd improve, yet he never did. I managed it that way and never complained or looked elsewhere until recently. When I saw Axel's massive tool, I became quite intrigued, and the FOMO set in. Guys, Axel is my lover, boyfriend. I guess I should speak in the past tense now that we're no longer together. He's the person I cheated on my husband with. I believe it is reasonable to say that he was the one who piqued my interest to the point that I couldn't contain it. I just wanted to know what it was like to sleep with a man like him. Before I go into the details of what transpired, let me tell you how I met Axel. So, as I previously stated, I am not really interested in any one firm. I do a lot of things, and 90% of the time, I don't like to stick with one business for very long. Rachel, one of my pals, is similar to me, making her an ideal business partner. We recently opened an online male clothes company. I get how strange that sounds, but believe me, this is not the first time I've stepped into a strange company. I'm continually trying new things and doing things that make more money at a given time. We had previously attempted to sell unisex and female goods online, but we learned that the female clothing business was already extremely competitive. Almost every clothing store carries 90% of female clothing. We also discovered that girls, unlike men, pay less for a variety of items and like bargaining. So I decided to start selling clothes for males because they just order anything they want, regardless of price. Rain is like that. He merely orders items, and I find out later that they ripped him off. So that's how I envision my business. We started a men's apparel brand as an experiment, and it turned out to be incredibly successful. The money I made exceeded my expectations, and I recognized it could finally be the business I stick with. I needed money to purchase a place for an official store and equipment. Rain gave me the money with no concerns because I rarely ask for money unless I want to invest it. With his assistance, I launched my store with Rachel, and things got insane. Business was thriving, and I was having a fantastic time. Sales were up, and we had an influx of customers. Most of the guys preferred to come and try on the items personally so that they could get their sizes correct. Rain explained that it was because males often struggled to locate clothing that fit their arms and other body parts. I had additional space for a changing room, so I set one up. Rain was initially very supportive of the business and was a regular customer, but I'm not sure what got into him or why. He just felt that a woman shouldn't sell men's clothing. I refused to listen to him. However, it eventually caused problems in our marriage. But now I wish I had listened to him, since it was via this clothing business that I met Axel. He was a regular customer who purchased shoes and ties from our website. We mostly transacted over Instagram, so he never had to visit my store in person. But one day he told me he wanted to come in person, since he needed some clothes and wasn't willing to take the risk of buying anything that didn't fit. We both live in Canada, so it was easy for this to happen. I was surprised to see him as he came inside the shop. He didn't look any different than he did on Instagram. He was simply more handsome. I asked him what he came for, and he said he wanted some singlets, boxers, polo shirts, and tuxedos. I had expanded the shop to accommodate Rachel's husband's fashion ideals, so we had everything he requested. We even sold suits in the store. Long story short, he went into the dressing room to change into his boxers. And that's when my FOMO set in. Yes, guys, my FOMO came in when I noticed his massive size. I am not even exaggerating. He's actually quite huge. He put on the boxer and singlet and stepped out to look in the mirror. That's when I realized how big his height was. To say the least, I was taken aback because I had never imagined him to be so big. In fact, I didn't expect that kind of magnitude from anyone. I have never seen somebody with such shape before, and I can honestly say he has good genes. It was a significant improvement above what I was used to seeing with Rain, so I became extremely inquisitive. He tried on many boxers and I couldn't stop gazing. I know I sound like the world's biggest loser right now, but believe me, this is just me being honest. I may not have been proud of how cheaply I behaved, but I had no alternative. In reality, if I hadn't succumbed to the temptation, I'm sure I would have ultimately caved in. Even my buddy Rachel kept pulling me to the side to tell me how huge he was. We attempted to act appropriately until he bought what he needed and went. Rachel attempted to bring up the matter after he left, telling me how huge he was. But I had to stop her because I didn't trust myself or what I was about to say. I wanted to pretend I wasn't interested, even though I couldn't stop thinking about him all day. I knew I was in big danger when I returned home and refused to sleep with my spouse that night. When I kept comparing Axel's size to my husband's, it seemed like I was missing something. I'd never been with somebody his big, and I'd had a number of unsatisfactory experiences with Rain. So I just kept thinking of Axel. The FOMO came in since it was the most irritating time of my life. Many people will undoubtedly attack me in the comments section, attempting to portray me as immoral, but I know I deserve it. I am a married woman, or more specifically, I was a married woman who should not have had those feelings for someone other than my husband. But I honestly became too intrigued. I felt compelled to attempt it since I had been missing out on something crucial my entire life. One day, I couldn't take it anymore and decided to message Axel. He replied to my message few hours later, and we began conversing informally. I mentioned a variety of topics, including new clothing inventory and promotional deals. I basically tried anything to start a discussion, and it worked. We started flirting, and he quickly asked for my address. I did not tell him my address and instead asked for his. He gave me his address, and I went there the next day. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't wait. I needed to know how it felt, so I went. When I arrived, I realized that Axel is actually a flirt. I told him I was married so he would not have any regrets later, but he informed me that he didn't care. Now that I think about it, I regret giving in so easily. but I feel like a hypocrite since that was not the enthusiasm I had at the time. At the time, I thought everything he said was simply too good, and he seemed like the ideal man. I ended up sleeping with him 3 times in one day. I really slept at his house before returning home the following day. I am stupid. I am stupid. Trust me, I already know. When I arrived home that day, Rain and I had a lengthy dispute. It was almost as if he suspected I had cheated on him and wanted to confront me. But it was mostly because I hadn't slept outside of the house since we married, which was highly rare. He stated a number of things, including implying that I needed to close the store since it was forcing me to do things I had never done before. When I spent the night at Axel's, I knew Rain was going to get angry, but I never anticipated him to be as angry as he was on that particular day. He informed me he had become suspicious of my movements and wanted to know why I was so secretive. Of course, I had to lie my way out of it since I was too terrified to reveal the truth. How was I meant to tell my husband I cheated on him? I knew Rain would never let it go, and I knew my desires would lead to the destruction of our marriage. I also thought that losing him would be a significant loss for me because he was the only consistent thing in my life. I did not want to lose him. That is why I continued to live a poor, private life during our 2-year marriage. I was simply too afraid to say no or try to be with someone else. A part of me felt compelled to be faithful to the man I had married. Even though things did not go exactly as planned, that is why I chose to conceal the fact that I cheated on him. Call me a coward for concealing it, but I simply believed it was the greatest thing I could do. I was able to suppress it so easily because I assumed I would never see Axel again. I assumed our relationship was finished and there would be no need for us to meet up. I went about my everyday life as if nothing had happened and simply kept on. I didn't even tell Rachel about it because I didn't trust her too much. Even though we were business partners, I couldn't imagine telling her I had cheated on my spouse. I couldn't even contemplate telling anyone what I did since I was too afraid of the consequences. However, concealing the truth was not the wisest move because it came back to bite me in the back. I've learned that deception is never a solution, and there's nothing you can do to prevent the truth from being revealed. You might be able to hide it for a while, but it will eventually leak out. The truth gradually emerged from my intimate life with my hubby. Of course, things aren't supposed to return to normal after I cheated on him. There will be indicators, and he will know that I cheated. It started with my casual approach about our nights together. I just didn't feel like sleeping with him anymore. Before meeting Rain, I'd only dated 2 men in my life. The first one was in high school, and we never became intimate. The second romance lasted 4 years in college. That is to say, I had never experienced my B until marrying Rain. So after spending time with Axel and seeing what it was like to be with a man like him, I despised my relationship with Rain even more. I really didn't want to be intimate with him since it felt like trash and wasn't as good as I hoped. Rain tried to be patient with me at first, but he eventually became irritated and frustrated. He kept asking me why I was so hesitant to get sexual with him, and I kept making reasons like being sick or sleepy. In the nights when I finally decided to be intimate with him, he could tell I was keeping something back. My reluctance lasted months before the truth came out. It was a long time, if you ask me. Rain is very attentive, and he began keeping a watch on me from that moment forward. I knew he was following me around, but I seemed to be unaware of what he was doing. The major reason I acted that way was that I didn't want him to become suspicious. Something crazy happened one day, and Axel called me on the phone. I was surprised to receive a call from him, given that we had agreed that it would only be a one-time affair. Please don't come at me. I already realize how idiotic and stupid I am. You really don't have to rub it in my face. I made mistakes that I am not proud of, and I should not have done what I did. But at that point, all sense of reason was lost. And I thought I wasn't doing anything wrong. I thought pleasing myself was normal, and there was no reason to feel awful about it. I should have considered Rain and how unfair I was to him. I replied he was the one who cheated. I know it would have hurt a lot. So after calling me, Axel suggested we go on a date. It was an unusual message because I knew he was never one to take things slowly for any reason. But I chose to simply listen to him and go on a date with him. He informed me he liked me when we were on our date. Yes, he said he liked me. I was shocked. And his abrupt confession struck me as strange because, as I previously stated, he was already aware of my marriage. I didn't understand why he would tell a married woman that he liked her. What did he anticipate at the end of the day? That I would enter into a full-time relationship with him. I was already having severe troubles in my marriage with my spouse, so I didn't want to complicate things more. That's why I asked him to hang on for a moment so I could think about what he said. He kept contacting me after that, attempting to check up on me. I knew I couldn't possibly like or fall in love with him. I just liked what he offered and how fantastic he was in bed. That is why I chose to give in at the end of the day. I tried to resist, but FOMO kicked in again, and I simply wanted to know what it was like one more. It is messed up. I understand, but my common sense has only recently returned. Back then, I believed I was doing the greatest thing for myself. I ended up meeting Axel one last time and spending the night with him again. After that day, I told him I couldn't meet with him again because my husband was becoming suspicious, and I couldn't afford to keep making him look for red signs. Axel agreed, saying he understood my point of view and that it was best. He pledged never to contact me again, and even mentioned that he was preparing to leave Canada after being transferred at work. I erased his number and left his place that day. I went straight home because I expected Rain at work but not at home. But that was simply me tricking myself and being in the dark, since when I arrived home, Rain was already waiting for me. Since I married him, he has never missed work without a valid reason, and he always does his best to maintain a consistent workflow. So I was very shocked to see him at home that day. I understand you're wondering why it concerned me that he was at home. Well, the fact that I spent the night outside and did not return home terrified me. We had previously experienced troubles as a result of this, so I knew there would be drama. I was also certain that the only reason Rain didn't go to work was to wait for me and chastise me for being late again. My assumptions were correct, as this is exactly what happened. He didn't even let me settle down when I returned. He began saying terrible things to me, including admitting that he knew I was cheating on him. I was astonished when he said it to me because I didn't think he'd assume I was cheating on him. I knew he had doubts about the way I acted at night, but I didn't expect him to link it to my craziness. It was a heated fight, and I did my best not to say anything that would suggest I cheated. All of my efforts were in vain. It all started with him nudging me to say something. He wondered why I stayed up late again and did not return home. When I failed to return home for the second time, he inquired as to where I was sleeping. All of those inquiries caught me off guard because they weren't what I expected. I didn't believe he'd be home, so I didn't plan ahead of time to tell him what I needed to say. While we were bickering, he told me I needed to stop acting like I was the most beautiful woman on the planet by denying him intimacy at night. He tried to undermine my confidence, so I got angry and informed him I was cheating on him with someone considerably superior to him. I informed him that he was not the most attractive person. He never satisfied me, so I had to find someone who did. After I said those things, I knew he was only trying to pull the truth out of me and wasn't certain I had cheated on him. He simply wanted me to utter the words myself so that he could know the truth, and I fell for it. That is how my marriage ended, gentlemen. Rain was so enraged that he almost touched me. I admire his self-control and ability to contain himself. I shouldn't have robbed it in front of him, but my rage drove me to do so. He kicked me out of the house the same day, and 2 weeks later I was issued with divorce papers. He did not attempt to consult me directly, and I have not heard from him since. I signed the divorce paperwork and am now waiting for our court hearing so that our divorce will be finalized. My marriage of 2 years has come to an end due to my foolishness and excessive curiosity. Update. Hello, folks. I'm here to update you on everything that has happened since the last update. So the divorce was formalized around 2 months later. Before we divorced, Rain made sure he collected the money he gave me to invest in the store. Fortunately, I was able to give him the money because of the earnings I made from the store. He only contacted me through his lawyer, and we never had a personal interaction. The last time I spoke with Rain, I told him I had cheated on him. The guilt is eating me up, and I regret everything. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure what I can do. I let my needs and desires lead me to do something I later regretted passionately. One thing about life is that you only truly appreciate what you have after it is past. I didn't expect to miss my ex-husband as much as I do today. Back then, I just felt like cheating on him was the best option. I had no idea that at the end of the day, I would be deeply regretting it. But now I see that I should never have married Rain if he didn't meet my expectations. It was unjust both to him and to me. On television, I've only seen or heard of unfaithful ex-wives who later tried to reconcile in the name of fixing things and loving each other. I used to believe that those who welcomed their unfaithful ex-wives back into their lives were foolish or naive, not realizing that one day I would be facing the same situation as those men. Mine was worse because she tried to bring back a baby that was not mine. The arrogance. Women are a nasty and manipulative species. They take advantage of the fact that you love them, even after their breakup. You still adore them and utilize it to their advantage. I still can't believe I was previously in the same predicament. I almost became trapped with a child that was not mine, if I hadn't received a wake-up call and taken issues into my own hands. I would have been the father of another man's child, if anyone has ever been in a position similar to mine. How did you deal with this type of face every day? Allow me to tell you about my ordeal. So I'm 44, married to this humble, down-to-earth, and loving woman. Her name was Faith F34. I adored her so much there was nothing I wouldn't do for her, but she took it all for granted. Faith and I met at a year-end celebration hosted by my boss 6 years ago. Her beauty captured my heart. Her humility and the way she handled herself made me adore her. When I first met her, she was with a group of female colleagues. I had no idea how she knew my coworkers, but I later discovered that she was the supervisor's younger sister. I worked as a financial advisor for an insurance business whose name I will not reveal for personal reasons, as well as Richards Bay. Let me start by telling you a little bit about myself so you can better understand my experience. I was born and reared in Richards Bay, KwaZulu-Natal. In the suburbs or the city, I am known as the Farm Julia. I was reared in a large family by parents who were quite rigorous about our culture. My father used to say that if one of his children reached the age of 30 and had not found a wife who would bear him grandchildren and help to increase his family, he would marry. He would have personally sought or arranged for that son's marriage because it would have revealed that the son was either a coward or gay. So I felt a lot of pressure because I was the third of my father's male offspring, out of 5 and 4 girls. I'm not sure who came up with the requirement that all men who reside in villages must have a large number of children or 2 marriages in order to expand their family surname. My 2 older brothers got married in the village. It was easy for them because they married their childhood girlfriends. And I, on the other hand, said I wasn't sure if I was the problem or if I had a problem since I wasn't interested in courting women. My only obsession was my books. Therefore, my brothers would sometimes refer to me as gay, because even if I came across a very attractive lady in our hamlet, I would lack the confidence to approach her. I was afraid of rejection and assumed that I was not the type of man they desired because I was a bookworm. So one day my father came home and called a conference for his boys. I assumed it was something serious involving the family or his health. Mind you, I was in the middle of my examinations when I enrolled in a distance learning course at UNISE, University of South Africa. I studied accounting and business management because I enjoyed accounting and managing enterprises. It was a 3-year study and I was in my 2nd year about to start my 3rd. Okay, so father summoned us to a large house. We call it a family home. We made it a point to always leave everything, no matter how busy we were, and obey father's summons. We had to honor his request. So, after we had all assembled, father began telling us about the problems we were having at home. What astonished me was that I was also having problems when, at the age of 30, my father revealed that he had found me a bride. He found me a wife when I was doing examinations. That made me angry because it implied that my father was unconcerned about my objectives and education. Instead, Dad wanted me to find a bride and impregnate her so she might bear him grandkids. I didn't dispute with him following his declaration since I knew I'd be in hot water. My father was doing what many parents do when they believe they know everything and what is best for everyone. He also stated that I needed to meet the girl before he could proceed. I didn't agree with him because I was in the thick of my tests and didn't want any destruction. But he threatened to disown me if I violated his word, so I had no choice but to comply. In the end, he was the family's leader. I miss my mother so much because she could soothe her husband's stony heart. Our mother died when I was just 25. It was the most difficult time of our life. I believed my parents were soulmates who would never be separated, but life and the universe had different intentions. Actually, more like my extended family. Elders had different plans for their relationship. As most people are aware, witchcraft and other strange practices are practiced in the majority of villages, particularly in Africa. You survive if you have a powerful ancestor and believe in them beside God. It's more akin to survival of the fittest. So the elders in my extended family summoned my father and advised him that he needed a second wife because one lady couldn't maintain a large household on her own. She needed a helper. Time passed, and the second wife arrived and was presented to us. She only had one child, who died when he was 15. The cause of his death was unknown, but when they visited a traditional healer, he informed them that the boy had died as a result of his mother's actions, since the second wife began accusing our mother of witchcraft and that she killed her child. The accusation and jealousy continued until my mother became ill. She had no idea what was going on with her because she had suddenly become ill. My brothers and I returned to the healer to try to help our mother as her illness worsened. We were informed that my father had admitted a snake inside our home, so instead of repenting for losing a child as a result of her actions, she became bitter and set out to destroy or kill everything related to our mother. 3 months later, our mother went away in her sleep. It was unbelievable because she had started to look better, but she was deceiving us. Her passing caused father to blame himself for our mother's death. Following the arrest of his second wife, he became cold-hearted and stricter. My older brothers didn't believe our mother had died in her sleep, so they went to the mortuary and requested a post-mortem to determine her true cause of death. When the results came back, we discovered that she had been poisoned. So my brothers returned with police officers and the wife was arrested. I've never been so furious in my life. I was furious and demanded the second wife's blood. Jail was going to be too gentle for her. She deserved severe punishment. A few days later, my father scheduled a meeting with this girl. Actually, he returned home with this girl. He said he found one for me. He introduced her as Nozippo, which means gift. The girl was gorgeous. I will not lie, but she looked too young and too forward for me. I didn't want to disappoint my father or get on his bad side, so I went with the flow. The girl and I started talking, spending time together, as my father had suggested. I told the girl that whatever that was happening between us, she shouldn't be comfortable because I was doing this for my father to get off my back. Me agreeing to the nonsense didn't mean I loved her and would ever love her. Forward and stupid girls who had no ambition and goals were not the type of girls I would want in my life. So no CFO gift was not the cup of tea I would drink, if it was up to me. But we have to respect our elders' orders and requests, right? We hung out a couple of times. She would sometimes see that I was not interested in whatever she was saying. She bored me to the core. We developed a pretend relationship because the way my father wanted grandchildren, it's like he was dying. So he didn't want to die before seeing all his children's kids. No, CFO and I slept together for obvious reasons. So during our planned relationship, she kept complaining that I was a boring boyfriend. I was too serious for her. How would you be a fun boyfriend to someone you didn't even love? She told me that she liked guys who buy at least a slab of chocolate just to make a girl happy or take her out, even if it's going to KFC, and that she wanted to feel special, like those girls who live in the city. I didn't understand why she was telling me this. Besides, she was from the rural areas, so I wondered how she knew such things. I then figured that it may be social media influence. So as we were trying for a child, as father wanted, nothing was happening. I then went to a doctor to check what was going on because a lot was happening to me. One, the girl had to work so hard for my shift to wake up to, if I wanted to get intimate with her. I first had to watch XX videos. And lastly, our intimate session did not last even 10 minutes. It was boring. So I tried to bribe her to break up with me and go back home. But she told my father and the old man was not impressed. Weeks after I had gone to the doctor, I heard rumors that the girl was pregnant, and people from the village believed that the child was mine because she had been seen with me a lot. I ignored all the rumors, and my father took it upon himself to go and pay damages to the girl's family. Since I had slept with her and made her pregnant months later, the child was born. She had moved to our home because father had paid dowry for when the child turned 3 months old. He started getting sick. So in our culture, if a child gets sick randomly, it's issues related to ancestors. When the child is sick, an elder or the head of the family has to burn an incense to speak or appease the ancestors and ask them to stop making the child sick. My father tried burning incense several times, but it didn't budge, which raised an eyebrow. After my father was about to give up, the incense got burnt, but not the way it was supposed to. The smoke was too small, and only a small portion of an incense was burning. The child kept getting sick, and the sickness got worse. I was also worried about the child, so I suggested that we go to a traditional healer to consult, and the CFO started throwing fits, saying she doesn't believe in traditional healers, so we can't take her child there. Okay, things kept getting worse with the child up until my father called the traditional healer at home, and the traditional healer kept saying the child has to be reunited with his true ancestors or else he would not get better. We didn't understand at first because we had thought the child was mine, even though the resemblance was not there. I gave him a C for the benefit of the doubt for my father's sake. Weeks passed, and some man came home and introduced himself as Brandon, and he was looking for a new CFO. The guy was also from our village, so I didn't understand why the CFO would just burst if the guy came in peace. The guy narrated his story and told us that he was there to get his child so he can do better by him. I got confused because I had thought the child was mine, since I didn't go back to the doctor for the results. He told us that he knew that the child was sick and needed his true family and to be united with his true ancestors, so he was there to take his child. No CFO got furious to a point that she then told the guy that she kept the baby away from him because he was poor and he wouldn't be able to take care of the child since he was just a herd boy. I got really mad to the point that I dragged the CFO outside and told her to go because if I were to see her, I was going to do something that would land me in jail. My father was shocked and disappointed because he had trusted the girl. I didn't believe the girl had the audacity to tell the poor guy that she agreed to become my fiancé, and the mother of my children was because we were affording and had cows, so the child was not going to suffer, meaning she had fooled my father to secure the bad gold diggers. You know, in rural areas, if you have livestock, you are considered as a rich man or rich family. So at home, we had that, and it came as a shock to my father that the girl he liked for me and was ready to pay for her bridal price was a scammer. What she did was a scam, but I knew it the way she was carrying herself. She was not the saint my father thought she was. So my father, along with my uncles, went back to her home to ask back the damage and dowry money because the girl they had thought was a good girl for me turned out to be a gold digger and ended up putting an innocent child's life in jeopardy just because she wanted to secure the bag. Since I kept my focus on books as I was going to graduate later that year, then I would move to the city and look for a job. After some time I graduated, I wished my mother was there. But then again, the universe and God had spoken, but at least father was there, and he was the proudest father. Few months later, I found a job at an insurance company. At that time, I was going to be just an intern, which was a great stepping stone for me because here in South Africa, you stay at home for years looking for a job with your qualifications, and most of the time you need connections to get a job. So I thank God and my ancestors for opening doors for me a few months after I had graduated. A year later, I was given a permanent position, and I couldn't be happier. I loved my job very much. That time, things were going very well on my side. Even at home, father had stopped pestering me about getting a wife. With the stipend I got from being an intern, I managed to get myself a small apartment because traveling from the city to the villages every day was not going to work since it was too far. Time went by and we were going to close for the festive season holidays. So the CEO of the company had hosted an annual year-end closing party for the staff. The previous year, I didn't attend it because I had gone home early. One of my brothers had hosted a ceremony. The party went well. It had a lot of vibe, but my eyes were glued to this one lady. The man who was my supervisor when I was an intern came to where I was and introduced her as Faith. His sister Faith was a very beautiful woman, no scratch that. She was gorgeous and the goddess. She had a very nice body, always smiling, shy, and humble. Well, I thought she was humble. Her brother left us and we started talking. She was smart, too. She had brains and big dreams. That's what I loved most about her. A woman with vision and ambition. She was a lady of class. You would see the way she was carrying herself, the things she wore. She respected and loved herself. So that night we chatted. I was having fun with her up until we heard the CEO delivering his appreciation speech. That was when we realized that the time had flown and we had to go our separate ways. I didn't want to look forward and ask for her number. I mean, as much as she had all the qualities I needed and wanted in a woman, but I couldn't bring myself to ask for her number more especially after what I had done, even though I didn't love her or caught my heart like how Faith did. But she still took me for a fool, which made me not fully trust women. Instead, she asked for mine, saying we should hang out since she didn't have friends and she liked my company. I gave it to her not knowing that I was setting myself on a trap. But what would have I done? A week later, she texted me and asked where I was. She was bored. Unfortunately, I was home with my family because we had all agreed that as much as some of us were working in the city, we had to make sure that during December holidays or any holidays, we would spend them home as a family. So I couldn't leave my family and attend to Faith's needs. We then decided to just chat on WhatsApp. From then we started talking, from chatting on WhatsApp to calling each other every morning and every night. We became good friends. When I went back to the city, we started going out in the name of getting to know each other. She then introduced me to different restaurants that I didn't know about in the city. I mean, the only thing I came to the city for was work. So I didn't know much about any fancy restaurants except McDonald's or KFC and retail stores where I bought groceries. Faith loved trying new things. She was adventurous, whereas I was just a village who was obsessed with books and numbers. She taught me a lot that I didn't know about. Introduced me to new things like going out, not to clubs, but visiting different places that had fun activities like hiking, mountain climbing, etc. We became very good friends. I appreciated every time I had spent with her. She taught me a lot that I didn't know about. Our friendship was really amazing. It went on until the day she came to my apartment. She had complained of being bored. She was still living with her parents. She was working as a travel agent at Richards Bay Airport, which explained why she was an adventurous person. Okay, so she came to my apartment. We just chilled, talked about random things, played board games until we decided to just watch something on Showmax. She loved watching reality shows like The Real Housewives. She was a huge fan of the Housewives. She would even tell me the kind of husband she would want to spend her life with. Her dream was to be a housewife and be taken care of by her husband. From watching her reality shows, I opted to change to Netflix. She chose romantic comedy movies, which we didn't even finish because we were busy talking during the movie. She surprised me when she kissed me and told me that she had always wanted to taste my lips. Mind you, I had also been controlling myself every time when I was with her. She was a temptation. So when she kissed me, my heart started having palpitations. I decided to go with the flow. I was happy that I had finally kissing the person I had been fantasizing about. She had soft and welcoming lips when things were about to escalate. I stopped it before we got too far. Time went by. We became what we call friends with benefits. We would satisfy each other whenever we could up. I don't know if I was the one or she was the one who caught feelings, but I believe I was. I couldn't continue with the no strings attached or friends with benefits thing, so I told her what I felt. And to my surprise, she said that she felt the same way. I had come to terms that not all women were the same. The time I had spent with Faith made me trust her not fully, but I did trust her. I was a free-spirited person. When I was with her, I felt alive, you know? It's like she was a missing part in my life. She was that missing chapter in a book. Since both of us had developed strong feelings for each other, our relationship got promoted from being friends to friends with benefits to an actual couples relationships. Our relationship was a bliss. We supported and loved each other. After 2 months of dating, she told her brother, my supervisor, about us because she didn't want any awkward vibes between us. When he found out her words, not mine, the brother obviously gave me a tough time but eventually accepted the relationship. Time passed, and I told my father that I had found a woman and I saw a future with her. Little did I know that I was just fooling myself. My father was happy at the fact that I had finally found myself a woman after the one he had found for me, who turned out to be a gold digger. So during Easter holidays, I had invited Faith to meet my family, which she gladly accepted. I was somehow nervous about how she would view my background, not my home, but the village, because she was a girl from the suburbs. When she came home, I first introduced her to my brothers and sisters. I loved the fact that as much as she grew up in the suburbs, she knew how to dress as a respectful woman. She respected occasions and made sure to wear respectfully. My brothers didn't trust her. I understood their fears, but they had no choice but to accept her as the woman in my life. I mean, father wanted grandchildren from all his children, right? So I had found the right person for that. But we were going to adopt, since the doctor said I was infertile. 6 months passed. I asked my father to gather the uncles because I wanted them to represent me to the Smith family in our culture. If you want to take a woman, you have to pay and introduce yourself to the family of your woman. Luckily, they were not too much of a suburb. People, as Faith's mother was a Zulu woman who knew and respected tradition. But she got married to a Smith family. Then she moved to the suburbs. My father and the uncles, along with my 2 older brothers, went to the Smith family to negotiate on my behalf and introduce myself to my in-laws. Faith's father knew a little about the Zulu tradition, so he had asked Faith's uncles from her mother's side of the family to help him during the negotiations. One thing I knew was that I couldn't wait for my wife. She showed me all the qualities of a good wife. I had hoped that she would be different from the one my father had chosen for me. Another couple of months passed. Everything that needed to be done traditionally was sorted. The only thing that had left was the white wedding. I couldn't be happier. You know, I was with the woman who matched all the qualities I needed in a woman. She made me happy and complete as a man. I just don't understand what has gone wrong. I worked very hard at work, took extra shifts so that I could raise enough money for our wedding and our surprise honeymoon. I had planned to take her to Balito for our honeymoon. I had heard that Balito was a great holiday place, especially for newlyweds, so I made sure to put every cent I got in savings because I didn't want her to contribute a huge portion of money to our wedding. I mean, I was her man, right? So it was my right and responsibility to provide for her. Time went on very fast to a point that our wedding day was approaching. I was happy. We were happy because the day we had been waiting for had finally come. So when the day came, our wedding was a success. Our families were united and happy as us. Later that day, we decided to rest. We were going to drive to the surprise location. Everything was a success. We had so much fun on our honeymoon. Few nights after our honeymoon, she wanted us to have a talk about expanding our family and having kids. Mind you, I had forgotten to tell her about my infertility problem, and as much as she was my wife, I was not comfortable to share such a sensitive thing about me with her. I was scared that she would leave me and find a guy who was fertile and would be able to impregnate her. Was I wrong to keep that as a secret? Weeks turned to months, and Faith was really persistent about wanting to have her own family. She kept reminding me every time she got. It was like she was obsessed with having a child. I don't know if she was obsessed with having a child with me or she just wanted a child that would call her mom. Unfortunately, I couldn't grant her wishes and give her what she wanted. There was this day when she came back from work. Chuckles. I couldn't believe what she did or said. So she came back from work. That day, I was not working. I had got a day off. She told me that she had removed her contraceptive preventing implant. Mind you, I didn't even know that she got an implant, so she removed her implant so that it would be easy to fall pregnant. And her doctor had told her that she was very much fertile. So in order for her to fall pregnant fast, she had to take some supplements and check her ovulation dates, which would be a great time to try for a child since her eggs would be active. I couldn't believe my ears. I told her that I didn't want any children, at least not at that time. I didn't give her any reason why I didn't want or was not ready for any children. I know it was wrong and selfish of me, but I couldn't risk losing the only woman I had ever loved, especially not when she had so much eagerness and obsession in having a child. What she told me really shocked me because I was not expecting it. So one day she asked why I was not showing any interest in starting or expanding our own family. I know that time I had a chance to come clean, but I was too ashamed. So I lied and told her that I was just not interested and I wanted to focus on my career. A week later, she then suggested that she was resigning or retiring from her work because she needed to focus on building her family and be a wife, which meant she wanted or expected me to provide for her with everything while she was a housewife. I just don't understand women sometimes. But I shouldn't have been surprised because she was influenced by those reality shows she was watching. And she once told me that her wish was to find a man who would provide for her so she won't have to work but be a housewife. A year passed and things were no longer the same in my house. My wife had started changing on me. Well, she had started changing when I didn't allow her to quit her job, since I was just a financial advisor, which was not a job that paid fortunes. My salary wouldn't even cover half of what she needed as a woman. Another thing, she had started getting impatient about getting pregnant. She would get angry at me whenever I refused her sex. She was not always in the house and had started traveling a lot, saying it was work-related. My conscience couldn't allow me to believe what she had told me. My mind was telling me that she was cheating. All those thoughts were running wild in my head to a point that confronted her, and she denied my allegations. I developed trust issues, and what no Sappho had once put me through came back. We had fights about that because she had started going out a lot, saying she was going to her parents' house and she would be sleeping over or going to work. I ignored all that because I had thought that she wouldn't lie about going to her parents' house and work. Plus, to me, she didn't appear as the person who would just be unfaithful. She was my innocent angel, not knowing that she was actually a devil's agent hiding under a white innocent cloth. Her visiting my parents became a trap song because I had somehow believed it and went with the rhymes and lyrics. So one weekend I decided to go and see her parents as my in-laws, of course, thinking maybe I would see my wife. I had missed spending time with her, so I was going to check up on the rents, then come back with her. I mean, I didn't marry her to spend more time with her parents, right? When I got there, I didn't see her, so I told her mom that I had come to fetch my wife since I missed her and I wanted to spend my weekend with her. I agree I had somehow neglected her because she had changed to an obsessed person who wanted a child so bad. And ever since I didn't allow her to be a housewife, she was going out a lot. So her mother told me that she had last seen her 2 months ago. That raised an eyebrow because whenever she was leaving, she would say she was going to her parents' house, and that was happening every weekend. I asked her about her lies when she came back, and the things she said to me were not what I had expected from her. She told me in the face that I was no longer satisfying her. So she got satisfaction outside our marriage, which was not the worst thing she said, because her last words were that she had been tolerating me for too long. We had been trying for over a year for a baby, but she was not falling pregnant. She even told me that I was less of a man and she wanted a divorce. I got furious and I ended up slapping her. Luckily, we didn't get married under community property, but I tried fighting for her, but her mind was made up, and she even threatened to open a restraining order for me. I love this woman too much. I still had plans for our marriage, very big plans, but she decided to just throw herself in someone else's bed just because she was not getting pregnant, and I was no longer satisfying her. I will not lie. Even today, when I think about her, I become enraged. She moved out of our marital home. My father had given us land as our wedding gift to build my house where I would be staying with my wife and kids, so I did as he had said. She was a gone girl. Father called a meeting between two families, mine and Faith's, to try and solve the issue that we were facing. Faith didn't show up at that meeting, so the two families looked at me as a man who couldn't control his house and was controlled by a woman. 2 weeks later, I saw her with a man in some restaurant. They were cozy, and even a small child would see that those people were in a relationship. So I granted her a divorce. At least I didn't lose anything to her. I couldn't fight for something that was not going anywhere. The ship had sunk, so it was time to move on and restart my life. Since then, I vowed to never fall in love again. The person I had thought had the qualities of a good woman showed me that no woman is perfect. They are all evil and manipulative. She made me believe that she loved me, but she chose someone else over me just because she couldn't get pregnant. So see that God works in mysterious ways. A year and a couple of months later, she came back home. She was not alone, but with a small child. The thing she said was she came to introduce me to my child. She had fallen pregnant before she got into a relationship with the man I once saw her with. And worse things happened. She found out that the man was married and was not willing to leave his wife for her. I just told her that she should go back to that man and introduce the baby to him because the baby looked nothing like me or any of my family members. When she refused to go, I called her parents and brother and asked them to come and fetch her. Then I told her that there was no way the baby was mine because I was infertile. Then I showed her the papers from the doctor. She couldn't believe it. So I asked her to never contact me again or set foot in my house because I would hurt her if I ever see her again. That day, I decided to be calm and not do the unthinkable to her. Later on, her parents and brother came and fetched her. I was so disappointed and angry at myself for investing all my love to someone who would do the same thing. Thank you for taking the time to hear today's story. If you enjoyed the article, please like and subscribe if you have not already. If you have a story to offer about your own or someone else's situation, please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.